if you figure out who this killer is with Bryce and keep an eye on her, I'll take your death toll from 2,000 down to 10. Welcome back once again to a new book review. Now, the book we are going to be talking about today is Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. Now, I don't know if you saw my haul video for this, but my aunt got me this entire trilogy. Supposedly there's a fourth book coming out, but I hope it's a trilogy because these books are long enough on their own. But my aunt and I were having a girls' day out a long time ago now, and I saw these and fell in love with them, and my aunt was like, I could get them for you. I was like, I can get them. She goes, I don't mind getting you books. I like that you like to read. And I was like, if you're sure. Well, I finally read it, and I started it over a month and a half ago and finally finished it because I haven't had much time to myself lately, so sitting down to read has been a bit difficult. But this review will contain spoilers for this book, so if you do not want this book spoiled for you, I suggest you skip it and come back to it once you've read it. Now, with that being said, let's talk about the characters. So the characters of this book are Bryce, and she is kind of your party girl, care about nothing on the outside, but really cares about everything on the inside kind of person, and her cousin / complicated relationship sibling dynamic with her brother or her sibling Ruin, and then a fallen angel by the name of Hunt, who is like your badass, not to be trifled with, contract killer character who ends up kind of in love with Bryce. And Bryce's friend Danica, and she is also a party girl, but is also kind of like the captain of the police guard in this world, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So let's get into my thoughts on this. So this is her first like full-on adult novel, I think, and it shows because unlike in A Court of Thorns and Roses, which was originally categorized as young adult, which was why the fully drawn out sex scenes kind of caught me off guard, but this one, there is really no spice in it at all, really, which was nice because I don't reach for books because they have spice. Like, most of my collection is not spice. I could care less if a story doesn't have it in it, but this story supposedly takes place in our world, but hundreds of years in the past, something happened where a portal opened up and the Fae kind of came in and took over humanity's side of things. And we see 100 years or so, or a few centuries later, how humans have kind of become lesser beings in their own world because the Fae have made our world their own and thus rule it. And it's kind of a mix of modern day with all these Fae elements to it and Fae hierarchies and stuff like that. My voice is still gone. I had the house to myself yesterday. I cranked music and was singing along while I cleaned. So if I sound sick, I'm not sick. My voice just isn't here. But I'm trying to move through it. So we see Bryce, our main character, kind of being the typical party girl, and she lives in a higher up society and shares an apartment with her best friend Danica, who is like ahead of the guard and stuff, and they go out partying, try every drug under the sun, drink till they drop, and just all of that. Supposedly her and Danica met in college as roommates and stayed fast friends even after they graduated college. So things take a turn. Like, I thought that Danica would be a much bigger character than she ended up being, but she ends up killed along with her pack very early on in the book. And her death ends up becoming the main driving force behind this story, because Bryce, having been away at the time on a date that she ended up not liking, ends up coming home to find Danica and the rest of Danica's pack completely torn to shreds. And conveniently for the killer, they lived in a building old enough that the security cameras did not catch what happened. They were only able to catch audio. So the story then becomes like a murder mystery type deal, where they have to figure out what happened. Originally, they thought it was a man who was a human who was making trouble in the Fae world for what the Fae had done to the human world. But it turned out not to be them, because he had a begrudging respect for Danica and would not have hurt her. So it's like, okay, then who did it and why? So 2 years go by with them not having answers, and eventually Hunt is put on to watch Bryce and keep an eye on her, because the killings are starting again. And so they have to figure out why and what's happening. Well, Hunt is a slave to the angels because he led a rebellion against the angels, becoming a fallen angel in the process, and was made to be bewitched, to have to follow whoever he's owned by at the time. So the angel he's owned by then said, "You owe me so many deaths for the amount of lives that you and your team took during that battle. You owe me a death for a death. Whoever I tell you to kill, you kill, no questions asked, because you don't have a choice." But the angel that Hunt is trapped under or enslaved to because of his rebellion tells him, if you figure out who this killer is with Bryce and keep an eye on her, I'll take your death toll from 2,000 down to 10. So he's like, this must be really important if you're willing to knock off that many deaths. I'll do it, because I want to get away from being your slave. I want to get away from this. I am not a killer. And so, tasked with finding out what happened, he works with Bryce and then ends up kind of having to live with Bryce. And then you see the two of them kind of bonding, because Bryce acts like this stereotypical party girl, but she's hurting inside. She has a father that treats her like garbage, and her adopted father, who actually cares about her, had been killed. Her and her mom butt heads a lot because they have similar personalities, and it causes them to argue a lot. And then her best friend and all of her other friends were killed 2 years prior because of this killer that they are trying to find. So she feels like she can't open up to anybody else, because everyone she does care about ends up dead. And Hunt, having been tortured and enslaved and just forced to kill because of his enslavement, kind of relates to Bryce in that way. And having lost the one he loves as well, they kind of start to come together and learn to like each other, as well as trying to figure out what's going on with the murder investigation. This is a good story, and I like that there wasn't spice in this. Like, there was one scene, and it didn't really go anywhere because they were interrupted. They are interrupted a lot, and I'm kind of glad for it because I don't think you need sex to make a story good. Honestly, at parts where they did start to get hot and heavy, I'm like, guys, this is not the time for this because you actively almost got killed. You have all of this stuff hanging over your head. You are in trouble. Not the time for this. Maybe figure everything out and then do the do. Like, not put a pause. Time out. Excuse me. I don't think you need sex in a story to make a story good. Like, you could have taken out all the times that they got, hot and heavy in the first place, and it wouldn't have changed the story. Like, leave the pining in there. Leave the want to be together. But, like, you don't need sex to sell us. Brain? You don't need sex to sell a story. And I appreciate that this didn't really have any in it. The pining? Yes. I like the pining. But I like how this steps away from, like, oh, girl trapped in the Fae world with the Fae prince, and kind of delves into the Fae world already being established. She is half Fae, half human, so she's stuck in the line between not belonging to the Fae, yet not belonging to the humans. And there's this darkness with the murder mystery element, and you see her being happy on the outside and putting on a smile, but in reality she's been through so much that she is sad and trying to play off like she still is this party girl. And I like that element to it. And it's kind of about moving on from stuff that happened in your past and learning to let go and realize that you have people still with you now that want you in their lives. That you have the opportunity to have a better life despite all the dark stuff that has happened previously. But if you give up, like at one point, Bryce was described as being on a roof ready to jump because she was just so tired of the pain. But luckily for her, a friend called her and talked her off that ledge. It's about letting go of the bad that happened, because you can't change that. It already happened. There's no changing it. And living for what comes next. And that you're not the only one hurting. Someone else could be hurting just the same. That the world's not picking on you. Everyone hurts in their own way. Which, yes, sounds generic, but sometimes the most generic stuff needs to be said the most or the loudest, because in one form someone might not understand that, but in a certain other form it catches their attention. But I like the murder mystery element. I was not expecting who it was, and I'm not going to say who it was for those of you that are still here that have not read the book but want to read it. I like the pining. I like the lack of spice in it. I like the characters and the world that's established. It kind of felt very arcane-ish, which I don't like to compare like certain things to certain things, because that's kind of a broad way of doing it. But you have the human world that are basically treated as cattle or less than, and then you have the Fae, which also have their own tier of things. And then there's this element of Fae aren't mortal, or Fae aren't immortal until they do the thing called making the jump. And what making the jump is they literally jump into their power. They have someone they care about to tether them to the world, and then they leap into their power. And if they're able to come back up, back into their body, their body will then be immortal and they'll live forever. But if they make the ascent, make the jump, and are unable to climb back up out of their power, they're just dead. That was an interesting way to do it. But I like this world, I like the characters, I like the murder mystery. Although I don't know where they're gonna take it in book 2 because the murder mystery's already wrapped up. And Bryce already took care of the problem that came after that. So I'm not sure where this book's gonna go. Oof, I hit my headphone cord. Where this one's gonna go, because they already solved everything. So I don't know. Maybe it'll come around that they find a way to stop the horn, because another plot point in this was the murderer was doing what they were doing because they wanted to get their hands on the horn, which was the thing that opened the portal to our world in the first place. It was the thing that allowed Faye into our world and was the only way that the portals could be opened again. The killer was killing people trying to find this horn, and because those people hid it from them. So, with the horn now found, where's this gonna go? Because Bryce already solved everything with what came after stopping the killer. So, it might come down to her and Hunt's relationship and seeing them go farther. There might be problems with the horn or with people coming after her for the horn. I don't know. So I'm going to start this sometime soon, and I'm also listening to book 6 of the Harry Potter series. I just now realized I started listening to the Harry Potter series 4 years ago, and I still am not finished with the series. I am very clearly taking my time with the books. But yeah, I cannot wait to start this one. It is only 3 more pages longer, where this one was 799 pages, this one is 803. So if this one took me a month and a half, this one's probably going to take me about the same. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time.